Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. I'm Alexa Dat, and today we've got a really special guest joining us. We've got TBS broadcaster Ron Darling, who's going to be with us here in just a few minutes. One of the best guys in the business. I know you are a huge fan, and today you get to ask him all the questions that you can possibly imagine. So there are two ways to get those questions to us here on the Chatting Cage. Use hashtag Chatting Cage on Twitter. I've got my Twitter open so I can see it there. Or sign in or sign up by clicking on the button below. That way you can actually be live in the Chatting Cage and ask Ron Darling your question. So let's go ahead and welcome our special guest, Ron Darling. Hey, Ron, good to see you. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Alexa. It's great to see you, too.
It feels like this time of year, I mean, it's almost like a holiday every day of the week leading up to the postseason. It's super exciting. All the energy is really high as we're seeing all these teams start to clinch and celebrate. So let's go ahead and jump to Twitter because we have a bunch of fans who want to ask you not only about the season, but about going into the postseason. This is from Mark, who wants to know which player is making the biggest impact for a team with September winding down.
Well, that's interesting. That's a great question. So I guess I'll look at teams like the Yankees, teams like the Oakland A's that are battling for that wild card home position, the Colorado Rockies, of course. So maybe David Dahl might play a part for the Colorado Rockies coming down the stretch. They're at home for the rest of the time. He's had a nice, good second half of the year, and maybe he can come through with a big hit when they need it. Reminds me of 2007 with the Rockies, where they needed to be almost perfect coming down the stretch to make it. And I think for Oakland, if they're going to catch the Yankees and somehow get a home game for the wild card, which would be not great for Yankee fans, but would be amazing for the rest of baseball and the Oakland Athletic fans, I think really is Rodney and Familia. How well of a job they do down the stretch getting the ball to Blake Trinan will be the difference maker whether the A's can catch the Yankees.
Yeah, and you know Familia very well from calling the Mets, so it's pretty cool to see him there in the postseason. As we head back to Twitter, Eric D says, yeah, like you mentioned right now, it looks like Yankees and A's in that AL wild card. Who are you looking forward to in that matchup the most, either a pitcher or a batter kind of facing off against each other?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. You know, a lot of us don't get to see the A's as much as we'd like, so I'm really interested to see Matt Chapman, who plays every game for the Oakland Athletics, play 9 innings. And I think on the Yankees side, I think the person I think I'm looking to be maybe a difference maker, because I think Aaron Boone's going to have to make the biggest decision he's ever had to make, right? Who's going to start that game? You have Severino, who started last year's wild card game, didn't work out that great. He has struggled a bit in the second half. Tanaka, of course, who's a pros pro and a guy that, other than the home runs allowed, seems to always get it done. And Jay Happ, who's been perfect, really, his record-wise since he's joined the Yankees and has a great record at Yankee Stadium. The key person I'm looking for is Jonathan Holder, because he's the guy that is the middle guy for Aaron Boone. So say if any of those decisions on who is going to start that game falters, it'll be Jonathan Holder who probably gets the ball first. So maybe the starter might not be the most important pitcher for the Yankees. It might be Jonathan Holder.
Maybe a little bit of a bullpenning game. All right, that'll be cool to see coming here into that wild card game. All right, here in the Chatting Cage, one of the best parts about it is live fans. Hey, what's your name and what's your question for Ron?
Hey Ron, my name's Dan, big Mets fan. My question is, what is it like? Calling games with Keith and Gary.
It is the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. I think a lot of people are blessed in their life. I was blessed to be a ball player, and then luckily somehow got into this business, and to be put in with Gary Cohen, who I think is one of the best play-by-play guys of all time, and then sit right next to one of my great friends that I played with. It's just is such a blessing. What's interesting about the booth and people who listen to us a lot, whether you like us or don't like us, what happens, I think, a lot of times is that if the games are really good, we get locked in and as excited as I get in the postseason. And let's say it hasn't been a great game for the Mets, maybe during their June swoon. I think we have the ability to really switch into this almost satire, Larry Sanders kind of show that is a kind of a satire on 3 guys doing a baseball game, but kind of making fun of ourselves that we're doing a baseball game. So it's just a joy. And thanks for that question, because I don't think I could have been the announcer that I want to become without those two.
Yeah, awesome to be able to give a shout out to Keith and Ron there. You guys are some of the best in the biz. We love listening to you night in and night out. Hey, let's stick in the NL East, Ron. Derek B wants to know, are this year's Atlanta Braves team talented enough to win a championship because they're ahead of schedule and they've got so many young guys right now?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think that because they're so young, a lot of people are just overlooking them. I think most people who look at it figure Chicago and Los Angeles will play in the championship series. But, I saw the Braves play 20 times, in fact, this season. And when you have young and veteran players, kind of that confluence and meshing together, and I'm talking about Acuna Jr., of course, their left fielder, Albies, their second baseman, and the veteran leadership of Freddie Freeman, who I just love watching the way he plays the game, and Nick Markakis. I think it makes for a very, very interesting postseason because there's really no pressure on them. People, like the question was asked, a lot of people thought next year was going to be their year. So beware the team with no pressure, with young guys who don't know how important these games are, so they might just play their game, and veteran guys who, of course, know how to get it done.
Yeah, that's what I've heard a lot from that clubhouse, that there are young guys in there that just don't even really know that they're not supposed to be there yet. I love that, and the fact that that's kind of the narrative for this team going in. Yeah, no pressure, nothing to lose. All right, we got one of our favorite fans here, Lou, joining us in the chatting cage. Hey, Lou, good to see you. What's your question for Ron?
Good to see you, too, and good morning to you both. And my question from Mr. Ron Darling is, out of the great moments that you've accomplished, sir, which one is the most memorable that stands out to you?
Well, sweet Lou, thanks for being on the show so much. I will tell you that despite being in the postseason, despite winning a World Series, I'm a big believer that it just takes kind of a village of people to get you to the major leagues, whether, of course, your parents, but coaches and friends, family, and your brothers and sisters, and they all play a huge part in kind of sometimes letting you or allowing you to try to go on this path to live your dream. So to me, it was September 6, 1983. The Mets were playing the Philadelphia Phillies, and I got my first start in the major leagues. And there were not a lot of people there. The Mets were not a good team in '83, and I could see and hear my parents behind the plate. And I still get goosebumps when I think about it because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been there. The first three hitters I faced were Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, and Mike Schmidt. I was just talking about the Braves. I was too stupid and young enough to know that those three guys I was facing, luckily I got through the inning. So I think really the greatest moment of my career was just that day of, fulfilling a dream, not only for myself, but for my parents and friends.
Oh, I love that, Ron. You gave me and a bunch of our viewers goosebumps, too. People are talking about it. Excellent story. This is from Jesse Lee. As a former pitcher, which AL postseason-bound team has the best starting rotation out of the, you got the Astros, the Red Sox, the Indians, the Yankees. Who are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling the Astros because they've had the most health. I know McCullers is going to be activated today and play a big part in that bullpen. I know Charlie Morton left to start on Sunday night, but for the most part, they've had the most health, and so there's more knowns. So I'm going to go with them. But when you think of the Red Sox, if Chris Sale is 100% healthy, and we won't know until he starts a game, then I like the Red Sox rotation. But it's the unknown. Sale on the DL twice, to me, tells you that they don't know, he doesn't know until he makes that start. If all is good, then he's a difference maker, of course. But Houston all year long have done things that we haven't seen in quite some time for Verlander and Garrett Cole to both strike over 250 batters. That's amazing. And don't also overlook the Cleveland Indians. Four solid guys, all four of them struck out over 200 batters, led by Corey Kluber.
We're here in the Edward Jones chatting cage with Ron Darling, who is covering the postseason for TBS. They've got the American League through the ALCS, so we're excited to see you there with TBS, Ron. We're going to head back to Twitter. Charles, speaking of all of these great pitchers, especially in the American League, Charles wants to know who gets your AL Cy Young vote.
Boy, that's a really tough vote, especially the way Verlander has come on of late. If you are the kind of person who likes to vote on what a person's done, not how much the body of work is, you can't overlook Blake Trinan and what he's done with the Oakland A's. But I think the Tampa Bay Rays, probably the second best story after the Oakland A's this year. You know, the opener has been talked about a lot. I think it's been amazing for the Tampa Bay Rays, but I don't think it would have been as amazing if they did not have Blake Snell in that rotation all year. 21-5, ERA just dangling around 2. I think his work every fifth day allowed them the ability to play around with some of their other starting position slots. So Blake Trinan, to me, Blake Trinan is amazing. Verlander's had an amazing year, but Blake Snell will get my vote.
That kind of knocks off B. Thomas's question, too. Talking about the Rays making that late push and what impressed you the most about the team. Yeah, the fact that Blake Snell really stepped up and wasn't really a pitcher that we had thought would be able to accomplish what he did coming into the season, and look where we are now. All right, we have another fan here in the Edward Jones chatting cage. What's your name and what's your question for Ron?
Hi, Ron. My name is Nick from New York, and my question for you is, what was your favorite feeling about playing in the World Series in 1986?
Well, Nick, thanks for that question. There's a lot of different great moments in that World Series. I think the moment for me, and you have to remember, I grew up in a town called Millbury, which is outside of Worcester. If people don't know, is right in the middle of Massachusetts, 35, 40 minutes from Boston. So I grew up as a Red Sox fan. Can you imagine? And I was pitching the fourth game. The Mets needed that game. They were down 2-1. And I had the worst warm-up you could ever have at Fenway Park. Bouncing balls, throwing it over the head of Gary Carter. And I remember telling our pitching coach, Mel Stottlemyre, I said, listen, I don't have it in the bullpen. I don't want to throw anymore. Let's just get in the dugout. I'll regroup. I'll figure it out. And as we were walking across the field, bullpen now is in right field, walking across the field, I got caught with the national anthem. And I was like, oh no, I'm in the middle of the field, national anthem's going on, I have to stay out there. And for a pitcher, you know, you have a full sweat working, the coolness of the air is just not a good combination. You want to be in the dugout by that time. So I missed my window. But I heard a little snicker and a hello, son, from my right. And I had forgotten my dad, who was with the Air National Guard, was one of the guys holding the flag that night. I had forgotten all about it because I was lost in my own world. And so I saddled up to him and got to hear the national anthem with my father, who taught me how to play the game. And as I walked away from him and said goodbye, I was like, I got this. I mean, I've known how to do this my entire life. And that man taught me how to play. So I'm going to get it done tonight. I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't been there. So the serendipity of life sometimes really can change the outcome of things that happen.
What an incredible moment. Thank you, Ron, for sharing that with us here on the chatting cage. So that leads us to our EDJ question of the day, Ron. We're going to put you on the spot in terms of predictions. Which two teams do you think will be in the World Series and who wins it all?
That is on the spot. Okay. I think that you can't take away what the Red Sox have done this year. Winning the amount of games that they've won is just something very, very special. Now, we've seen it in the past where the Seattle Mariners in 2001 won 116 and didn't get there. I don't think that's going to be the case for the Red Sox. I think they're going to get there. I think they're going to play the Chicago Cubs, who are, or in my estimation, maybe just a smidgen above the Dodgers as far as their talent is concerned, and that the Red Sox are going to win another World Series. That's a bold prediction. There's a lot of teams that could win. And the great thing about October and doing the postseason baseball for me is that you just don't know. It's so hard. The travel's so hard. What it places on your team is so difficult. The days off allow bullpens to recharge. Anything could happen, but I'm going to stick with that for now. We'll see what happens. Yeah, we will see what happens. And Ron, we'll be watching you with TBS covering the American League all the way through the ALCS. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Edward Jones chatting cage. Appreciate it. Thanks, Alexa. Always great talking to you. Yeah, you too. And thank you to all the fans for all the questions that you've submitted. Really appreciate it. We loved hearing from you all season long here on the Edward Jones chatting cage. I'm Alexa. Till next time.